In the heart of the dense, ancient forest of Blackwood, a sinister legend lingered for generations. Whispers of a tall, faceless figure clad in a black suit, with unnaturally long arms that seemed to stretch beyond human limits, haunted the dreams of the local villagers. They called him the Slender Man, a malevolent entity said to prey on the unwary, especially children. It was a dreary October evening when a group of college friends decided to spend the weekend at a secluded cabin near Blackwood Forest. Sarah, the adventurous leader, convinced her friends, Mike, the skeptic, Emily, the sensitive artist, and Tom, the tech enthusiast, that it would be a thrilling escape from their mundane routines. The cabin, an old, creaky structure with peeling paint and broken windows, stood at the edge of the forest, its presence alone evoking an unsettling feeling. As they unpacked their bags, a sudden chill swept through the air, and the once vibrant autumn leaves rustled eerily in the wind. That night, as the group sat around a roaring fire, sharing ghost stories and laughing, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Her eyes kept darting to the dark woods beyond the cabin's window. She whispered to Sarah about her unease, but Sarah dismissed it as mere nerves. However, as midnight approached, Tom, the tech enthusiast, decided to set up his night vision cameras around the cabin, hoping to capture wildlife. As he adjusted one of the cameras near the tree line, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. Turning swiftly, he saw nothing but the inky darkness of the forest. Inside the cabin, Mike scoffed at their jitteriness. "It's just the woods," he said, rolling his eyes. "Nothing out there but animals." The next morning, Tom eagerly reviewed the footage, his excitement quickly turning to horror. There, in the frame, stood a tall, slender figure at the edge of the forest, watching the cabin intently. The figure had no face, just a blank, pale head that seemed to absorb all light. Tom showed the footage to his friends, their laughter dying in their throats as the realization of their situation dawned on them. "We need to leave," Emily whispered, her voice trembling, but Sarah, ever the skeptic, insisted it was just a prank. "Someone's messing with us," she declared, though her voice lacked conviction. As night fell, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The friends locked all doors and windows, but an eerie silence enveloped the cabin. They took turns keeping watch, but exhaustion soon took over. Around 3 a.m., Emily woke to a soft tapping sound on the window. She froze, her breath hitching as she saw the Slender Man standing just outside, his long fingers tapping rhythmically on the glass. She screamed, waking the others, but when they looked, the figure was gone. The following days were a blur of terror. They found strange symbols carved into the cabin walls, and at night, they heard whispers that seemed to come from within their own minds. Sleep-deprived and paranoid, their friendships began to fracture. Mike accused Tom of staging everything, while Sarah tried desperately to maintain control. On the fourth night, Sarah went missing. They found her journal, filled with increasingly frantic and incoherent scribbles about the Slender Man. The last entry simply read, "He is inside." Panic set in as they searched the cabin and the surrounding woods, but Sarah was nowhere to be found. Emily, now a shadow of her former self, claimed she could hear Sarah's voice, calling for help from the forest. The remaining three barricaded themselves in the cabin, armed with makeshift weapons. But as darkness fell, the oppressive presence of the Slender Man became unbearable. The air grew thick with fear, and the shadows seemed to come alive. Around midnight, the lights flickered and went out. In the pitch-black darkness, they heard Sarah's voice again, clearer this time, begging them to join her. Emily, driven to madness, ran into the forest, leaving Mike and Tom alone. With only a flashlight between them, Mike and Tom faced the inevitable. The Slender Man appeared in the doorway, his faceless head tilting in curiosity. As the flashlight flickered, Mike felt an icy hand close around his wrist, and the world went black. Tom's screams echoed through the forest, merging with the whispers of the wind. When the sun rose, the cabin stood silent and empty, a testament to the horror that had unfolded. The footage Tom had recorded was found, showing the final moments of their terror, but their bodies were never recovered. Years passed, and the events at Blackwood Forest became a dark legend, shared in hushed whispers among the locals. The cabin was abandoned, left to rot under the weight of its sinister past. No one dared to venture too close, fearing the malevolent presence that was said to still linger. Yet, curiosity and a need for closure drew the attention of a new group. Lisa, a journalist obsessed with uncovering the truth behind urban legends, assembled a team of experts. Dr. Allen, a paranormal investigator, Rachel, a psychic medium, and Kevin, a documentary filmmaker. Together, they resolved to uncover the mystery of the Slender Man and bring closure to the tale that had haunted so many. Arriving at the dilapidated cabin, the team set up their equipment. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Lisa, determined yet apprehensive, led the group inside. The interior was exactly as described in the stories, with strange symbols still etched into the walls and remnants of the college students' belongings scattered about. Rachel, sensing the lingering energies, immediately felt the malevolent presence. "He's still here," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Watching us." Dr. Allen, ever the skeptic, brushed off her concerns. "Let's focus on gathering evidence," he said, setting up motion detectors and thermal cameras around the cabin. As night fell, the team began to experience the same eerie phenomena. The air grew colder, and shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. Kevin, filming everything, captured faint whispers on his audio recorder, voices that seemed to come from beyond the grave. Lisa, reviewing the footage, noticed a tall, faceless figure lurking at the edge of the forest. "He's real," she muttered, her heart pounding in her chest. "We need to be careful." Around midnight, the motion detectors went off, and the thermal cameras captured a cold, humanoid shape moving through the trees. Dr. Allen, finally realizing the gravity of their situation, suggested they leave, but Lisa insisted on staying. "We need to see this through," she argued, her obsession blinding her to the danger. As the clock struck 3, Rachel suddenly screamed, her eyes rolling back in her head. "He's here!" she shrieked, pointing towards the window. The Slender Man stood there, his faceless head pressed against the glass, his long fingers tapping rhythmically. Panic ensued. Dr. Allen tried to grab his equipment, but the Slender Man's tendrils lashed out, knocking him to the ground. Lisa and Kevin pulled Rachel away, retreating to the back of the cabin. The entity moved with unnatural speed, appearing inside the cabin in a blink. Kevin, filming desperately, captured the horror as the Slender Man extended his arms, wrapping them around Dr. Allen. A sickening crunch echoed through the room as he was pulled into the darkness. Lisa, Kevin, and Rachel ran into the forest, the Slender Man's form moving silently behind them. The forest seemed alive, branches clawing at them, roots tripping them. Rachel, overwhelmed by the entity's presence, collapsed, her mind shattered by the psychic assault. Kevin, torn between saving her and escaping, made a desperate choice. "Go!" he yelled to Lisa, shoving her forward. "Get help!" Lisa, tears streaming down her face, ran blindly through the forest. Behind her, she heard Kevin's screams and the horrifying silence that followed. She stumbled upon an old path, following it until she emerged, exhausted and terrified, at the edge of the village. Lisa, the sole survivor, tried to tell her story, but few believed her. The footage Kevin had taken was found, but it only raised more questions than answers. The legend of the Slender Man grew, fueled by the chilling evidence and Lisa's haunting account. Years later, Lisa returned to Blackwood, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't resist. The forest, now overgrown and even more sinister, seemed to call to her. As she walked towards the cabin, she felt the familiar chill, the oppressive silence that signaled his presence. The Slender Man awaited, his faceless head tilting in curiosity. The story was far from over, and the forest would continue to claim those who dared to uncover its dark secrets. Lisa's return to Blackwood Forest felt like a journey into the heart of her deepest fears. Each step closer to the cabin seemed to awaken the memories of the horrors she had witnessed. As she approached the dilapidated structure, the forest's oppressive silence seemed to embrace her, a dark welcome back to the place of her nightmares. Determined to end the cycle of terror, Lisa carried a satchel filled with ancient texts and protective talismans she had gathered over the years. She believed that somewhere within these pages lay the key to confronting and possibly vanquishing the Slender Man. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was even more suffocating than before. The air was thick with malevolent energy, and the symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. Lisa spread out her materials, lighting candles and arranging the protective talismans in a circle around her. As she began to chant the incantations from the ancient texts, the temperature in the cabin plummeted. Shadows twisted and contorted, and the oppressive presence of the Slender Man grew stronger. Lisa's voice shook, but she continued, pouring all her fear and anger into the ritual. The Slender Man appeared, his tall, faceless form emerging from the shadows. His tendrils reached out, but they were halted by the barrier of talismans. For the first time, Lisa saw hesitation in the entity's movements. She pressed on, her chanting growing louder, more insistent. The cabin shook, the walls creaking as if under immense pressure. The Slender Man's faceless head tilted, and Lisa felt a searing pain in her mind as he tried to break through her mental defenses. She screamed, but the protective circle held. Visions of the past victims flashed before her eyes: Sarah, Mike, Tom, Dr. Allen, Kevin, and Rachel. Their faces twisted in agony, their voices echoing in a cacophony of despair. Lisa's resolve wavered, but she clenched her fists and screamed the final words of the incantation. A blinding light erupted from the circle, and the Slender Man let out a soundless scream, his form flickering as if being torn apart. The cabin shook violently, and Lisa was thrown to the ground, her vision blurring. When Lisa awoke, the cabin was silent and still. The oppressive presence was gone, replaced by an eerie calm. She cautiously stood, her body aching from the ordeal. The talismans lay scattered, their power spent, but they had done their job. Stepping outside, she saw the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. The forest, once dark and menacing, now seemed almost peaceful. Lisa felt a profound sense of relief, but also a deep sadness for the lives lost to the Slender Man. Returning to the village, Lisa shared her story one final time. This time, people believed her, especially with the evidence of the ritual's aftermath. The legend of the Slender Man began to fade, replaced by tales of Lisa's bravery. Years later, the forest remained quiet. The cabin, a crumbling ruin, was left untouched, a silent monument to the horrors and the heroism that had transpired. Lisa, now an advocate for paranormal research, carried the memories of her friends with her, their voices no longer cries of despair, but whispers of gratitude. The Slender Man was gone, banished by a determination stronger than fear. But the forest held onto its secrets, and deep within its ancient heart, shadows still whispered. Lisa knew that evil never truly dies. It only slumbers, waiting for the unwary to awaken it.